Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel and Kim, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com. On today's US Open Round 4 catch-up,
Nick Kyrgios gets the better of defending champion Daniil Medvedev.
Caroline Garcia's win streak continues.
And last Brit standing, Cam Norrie bows out in straight sets.
Chris, today is the 5th of September. We are here to catch up on round 4 action from the US Open at Tennis Weekly HQ. It's all happening at the moment. We've got the world #1 on court with Iga Swiatek. Rafa is a set down to Francis Tiafoe. So lots to talk about, including all of yesterday's matches as well as today's action so far. It's just you and me today, Chris, because Joel is off in Madrid having some churros and
he is indeed
soaking up the Spanish way of life.
I think he is doing just that, but I think he's also maybe working. So I think that your trip to Kent sounds like it might have been a bit more relaxing than what Joel is up to.
Yeah, we shouldn't pretend that Joel's just swanned off, leaving
having
the
a break
podcast in disarray, not caring about the US Open. No, he is there on work purposes, so I don't think he's getting to see an awful lot of the city. But it does mean we've been given the reins, and I think this is only the second podcast in Tennis Weekly / Passing Shot history that has taken place without Joel.
Wow!
So
when was the last one, Kim?
So the last time I did a podcast without Joel was about 3 years ago before Wimbledon. Some of our listeners who have been with us from the early days may remember it. I just spoke for about 45 minutes about the Wimbledon draws.
The solo pod.
If anyone really likes to hear my voice, they could scroll back and listen to that episode. But it's nice that we've got you on board today, Chris, to save our listeners from experiencing just me again. But yeah, I mean, I listened to you guys chat about the third round. I enjoyed hearing your perspective on Serena, her last match against Tomljanovic, which, it was a good send-off for her, wasn't it? And she wasn't able to get the win, but it was a match that I think, well, it was better than her getting obliterated love and won, wasn't it? So I think she would be reasonably okay with that. I was also thinking, before we move on to the women's fourth round from yesterday, if Coco Gauff goes and wins this whole tournament, as I put in my predictions, there's totally going to be changing of the guard headlines, isn't there? What with Serena retiring and maybe Gauff winning in one tournament.
It's going to be mega if that happens. I think so far Serena being in the draw has taken the pressure off some of the US players. I think definitely for Jessie Pegula, I'm not sure she's felt like she's the US #1 in this tournament when there's the attention on kind of Coco and Serena. So, I mean, if that does happen, if you do get the prediction right, Kim, I think the pressure will be almost Serena Grand Slam 24 levels on Coco, because this has been a long time coming. She's already had a Grand Slam final, and it would just be so sort of poetic and an American changing the guard, as you say. So it could still happen. I'm not sure Serena will be there to watch it, but it would be fantastic if fantastic if Coco could go far, but I'm not sure I want you to get the final prediction completely right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would be able to be smart, because I don't think I've ever predicted Coco Gauff, yes, she was one of the favourites, but I feel that, getting that right, it's still going some. So, I mean, she's got a long way to go. She's got Caroline Garcia next. Let's round up, first of all, their respective fourth rounds, because Gauff had to really fight her way through Zhang Shui of China. 7-5, 7-5. Zhang was playing some amazing tennis
Incredible.
At the very start of the match. She got an early break, but Gauff had to really use the energy of the crowd, I thought, to kind of fight her way through. And I thought it was a very gritty performance and an inspired performance, and to come through in straight sets especially, I thought was very commendable. And exactly, just she's still on course for this potential glory at the end of the fortnight. And then Caroline Garcia, straight sets against Alison Risk. I mean, Out of the two of those performances, like who impressed you the most, and where are we thinking, when it comes to their matchup tomorrow night?
Well, I have to say both were impressive in slightly different ways. I think that Coco Gauff was impressive because she was playing against someone who had absolutely no pressure on them and was swinging and hitting so big. And I think that's something that when you are up against that challenge and you really have to sort of stem that challenge and really kind of come through that, then I think that's particularly impressive because she was being out hit at times and she did have to come back from 5-3 down in the second set as well. So that was particularly mature in terms of her performance. But Garcia, I have to say, and I'm not just saying it because you're hosting today, Kim, but Garcia was so impressive. The way that she kept a cool head, it was such a tight first set, and she had to kind of rein it in a bit from going a bit too big at times, and she found a way, and then she just steamrolled her in the second set. And I was so impressed with the numbers she pulled. I think it was something like 30 winners and 8 aces, and she wasn't broken. So, I mean, I would say that. I imagine you might say the same.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be you don't have to apologise if she wasn't quite so good just because I'm a fan. But yeah, I mean, her numbers are really actually impressive when you look on paper. I mean, thank you, Chris, for adding this to our script today, because these stats are really quite interesting. On average, she's doing 29 winners per match and is hitting a winner every 2.7 minutes, which
is that around the clock? Is that at 7 a.m. in
her
practice?
sleep?
Yeah, exactly.
She's dreaming winners up. She's hit 116
one
winners.
ball every minute, 2.7 minutes for a winner.
She's hit 116 winners so far at the US Open, which is the most of any female still left in the draw. I mean, I didn't even think she was playing her ultimate best in that first set of tennis, but it was still, more than enough to get that first set over Risk, who is a player who Caroline Garcia has never beaten before. She's only ever lost to Risk. And I mean,
that's
after that first
surprising.
set, she really kind of flew away with it, didn't she, in the second, with that confidence from having claimed the first. Did take a bit of a while to close out. Had to have a few match points, save a few break points, but that's, Caroline Garcia trying to close a match for you. She hasn't quite got over the little little kind of wobbles. Yeah, I mean, you can understand, but she did well to not let Risk sort of have any, I guess, hope of a fight back in that second set.
I saw that it was her first Grand Slam quarterfinal appearance in over 5 years, which seems unbelievable when you think about how she's been in the fourth round quite regularly at some of these majors and had a good run obviously at Wimbledon. But for someone of her ability, it's kind of mad that she's never been past a quarterfinal, and not for 5 years, since 2017. That's something that was particularly surprising to me.
I think that was Roland Garros, I guess 2017. And I don't know who she played in that quarterfinal, but I remember her playing against Cornet, I think, to get there. But I'm not sure who it was in the quarterfinal. I have to look it up. But I mean, this quarterfinal against Coco Gauff at home, for Coco Gauff, she's going to have the energy of the crowd behind her, the US crowd. It's going to be a night match. I mean, it's newer territory actually for Caroline Garcia really than Coco Gauff, because Coco obviously got to the French Open final this year. So in terms of experience at this level, Garcia may be the older player, but arguably Coco Gauff is the more experienced. However, obviously Garcia has won 2 double slams, has won premier titles. So we put it all into context. All that experience still adds up.
Absolutely. But I mean, it's crazy to think that Coco Gauff at 18 is the more experienced of the two players when Caroline's been on the tour for over a decade. But the night session at Ashe, everyone has said it is a different beast. You either love it or it really doesn't bring out the best in you. And I think it could be that sort of nerve jangling, stressful situation that Caroline doesn't necessarily enjoy that much. So I reckon it's going to be a great match. I think if Caroline is able to keep a clear head, she'll be able to get it done. But I'd love to see it go to 3 rather than kind of these straight sets that almost go to 3. I'd love to see another epic 3-set match in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Garcia hasn't dropped a set yet, so she'll be hoping to continue in that fashion and just sort of serenely come through. I don't think any of her sets have gone beyond a 6-4, so she hasn't even had to get to kind of the nail biting end of a set or have any tie breaks so far, which just goes to show the form she's in. So I mean Coco Gauff could quite well feel the pressure as well. So I think that could go either way. That's the quarterfinal I have to say I'm most excited for. I think it could very well decide the tournament winner, if we could be so bold as to say that. I think some other people may be along those lines, and it could decide our collector set as well, of course.
It really could.
Garcia is in the collector set as one of the only 2 last remaining candidates in those picks. I think we'll do a proper update on that maybe next time around. Let's quickly touch upon the other 4th round action on the women's side from yesterday as well. I woke up to these results this morning. I didn't see the matches live, but we had Ilia Tomljanovic against Ludmila Samsonova. And this one, so Samsonova was playing some absolutely great stuff coming into this match. Tomljanovic obviously had got that win over Serena Williams, which must have given her, a hell of a lot of confidence. But yeah, Tomljanovic 7-6, 6-1, straight sets in the end over the Russian, and really Tomljanovic again, just showing her fighting spirit. She was down 5-2 in that first set and came through, saving 8 set points en route to grab that on the tie break. Massive set, and that kind of changed the rest of the match, really, didn't it? And Samsonova wasn't able to come back after losing that lead and letting that slip.
Yeah, we talked about this on the podcast, the last podcast, Joel and I think we thought Samsonova might just have the edge in this one. So I think it's just goes to show how important that first set is. We've seen so many tight first sets. We'll talk about the Kyrios Medvedev first set being so important in later in the podcast, but there's also in the same session, Ons came through 7-6 in a tight first set. And it's something about, the water in New York where there is guaranteed to be one set that is full of drama, and 8 set points is just something that I don't think I've seen that before. I think we've seen, 6 match points for her to get past Serena, but to keep a level head after what's probably been an absolutely unprecedented 48 hours in her tennis life to date, I think it's something really impressive to be able to turn up again and not only back up what is the biggest win of your career, but also perform so well against someone who's really in form and you haven't beaten before. So it was great to see that match pan out the way it did, because you feel like she earned it after her performance on Ashe the other night.
Yeah, and it's nice to see Tomljanovic getting into another Grand Slam quarterfinal, because
with points.
Yeah, with points this time round. Yeah, because she's done is it 2 in a row at Wimbledon now, I think?
2 in a row, yep.
Yeah, and so she's getting quite consistent at the slams, and really been very impressed with what we've seen from her, in the last couple of years generally. And I think Samsonova, we disappointed because I think, she was on a win streak here, wasn't she? And we haven't seen her go deep at a slam, which will be kind of the next thing we're really looking to see from her. And I think, she might, how kind of having those 8 set points and not taking them, if you're someone that sort of ruminates on that, that's going to do you in. So that may have very well impacted on her a lot. But I think for Tomljanovic, she was saying afterwards that after that Serena match, she just did not want her time here to end. So on it goes. It goes on further, and she will now face in the quarterfinal on Jabeur, like you said, who also came through in straight sets over Kudermetova. What have you made of Jabeur kind of in this match and so far? Because, getting to that Wimbledon final, not quite making it and getting the title, obvious some disappointment there, but she seems to be coming through the draw nicely. And should we be looking at her as the most likely? She is, I guess, she is the highest seed, apart from Swiatek, of course, left in it, I think. So, where are you thinking on Jabeur wise?
I think it does depend so much. Going into a tournament, you never know how she's going to perform. We saw at the French, she had a round 1 loss. She had a final at Wimbledon. Probably could have got that final if she'd have managed to keep a sort of cool head. And coming into the US Open, it's kind of uncharted territory. She's never had a particularly great result here. And I think what I've seen is that she has played herself into this tournament. She's hit some fantastic shots. and she served so well and so consistently that it's almost, as Joel said on the last one, I've got to give him some credit, and this is a little Easter egg for Joel as he goes through listening and editing tonight, is that he did say the night session and Ons could be a match made in heaven, and it seems like it did, because she played kind of out of her skin from being down in that first set. And I think she joked afterwards that she asked if she could have Serena serve when she retired. And it seems like it's working, because she had 11 aces and 0 double faults. So I think if you're serving that well and you have the skills off the ground that she has, who would kind of bet against her in this bottom half? I mean, Tomljanovic has played well, obviously, and she'll be hitting the ball, very consistently and with great depth and great pace and retrieving well. But Ons does have that level that I think potentially Tomljanovic can't reach. So again, you can't count her out, but I think it's hard to know on a match-by-match basis which Ons will turn up on the court that day.
Yeah, I mean, I love that quote about asking Serena if she could have her serve. I mean, that's
Please.
Just brilliant. Yeah, and I mean, in this match, she did have 11 aces, 0 double fault, 72% of her first serves won. Pretty decent serving stats.
Serena stats, right?
It's obviously worked. Serena has donated her serve to Ons Jabeur. That would be quite fun, wouldn't it? If all retired, previous players could just give their like magic skill or their kind of top stroke to a player still active on the tour.
Top stroke would be key.
Harry Potter or something. That might be a thing, but it's not quite so magical as that, is it? But I think Jabeur is here. She's focused. She seems to have put all that Wimbledon kind of. I mean, obviously getting to the final was amazing, but I think she was obviously disappointed that she couldn't go all the way. But she seems to put that behind her, and I feel like although Tomljanovic is having a great tournament, for me, Jabeur is the favourite for that match, and I think, I'm just looking ahead at the draw. A Gauff / Garcia versus Jabeur semi would be also absolutely fantastic.
There's some great matchups in the quarterfinals, Kim. I really think that this tournament, more so than Wimbledon, you really see that we're getting some players that are just playing at the absolute peak of what they can do, and you just don't know how it's going to go.
And no offence to like the Wimbledon semi-final lineup, but I mean Tatiana Maria, obviously it was a fantastic story, her getting to that point. But I think that actually, generally speaking, like the quality of the sort of quarterfinals that we'll have lined up, I think does trump what we saw at Wimbledon. Less surprises, I think, in this draw. There perhaps a bit more names that we're more familiar with as well, but I think just hopefully going to be some really cracking matches. Let's talk about some of the matches that we had today. We had earlier, surprisingly, I guess, one-sided affair between Petrikovitiva and Jessie Pegula. 6-3, 6-2 to Pagula. I thought this was going to be a bit closer. I thought, Kvitova, after having come through that match with Muguruza, I know that was very close. Muguruza arguably should have won that match. I thought Kvitova was going to bring more to the table, but perhaps that match from before was just a bit too much. Took a lot out of her, and she just wasn't able to bring it today. So, what did you make of Pegula's performance and Kvitova's kind of level that we saw on court today?
Kvitova's always been a player that has said she accepts that she's going to miss some, she's going to make some, and if she makes more than she misses, she'll probably get the win. And today it felt like it was one of those days when if there was a ball that could be missed in that second set, she really did miss it, and by some margin. So disappointing for sure, given the performance against Muguruza, and Muguruza might see this performance and think she probably could have done a much better job in this match against Jessie Pegula, because the numbers weren't great from either. Pegula was just really solid. She soaked up the pace, and she was able to kind of wait out the mistake in quite a lot of those rallies. So not quite the match we would have hoped for. And also for Kvitova fans, quite a big disappointment, because she's one of those players which it's almost unbearable watching her when she isn't on song, because those balls are flying everywhere, and it's a very painful experience to watch, I'd say. But still a good tournament, a fourth round, and a good hard court season. But I think the question remains. I think last time Joel called me up on it for being a little bit too hard on Jessie Pegula when it came to who's the best prospect out of her or Collins. But it looks like Pegula's starting to put it together, and I'd kind of put the same question to you, Kim. Where do you stand on the Pegula-Collins debate?
Well, I had Pagula as my finalist in our tournament predictions. In fact, I had Coco Gauff to win, so it's still on. My final is still on. Although obviously I want Garcia to do the Renaissance, so
yes,
I'm personally torn there. But yeah, I mean, Pagula's such a consistent player. I think she's really carved out this consistency from, I would say, a few seasons ago when she was first kind of coming up into the sort of higher echelons of the game. And yeah, that's the most impressive thing about her, is she's very reliable, and you don't really expect her to ever nowadays like fall really early in a slam or have a really kind of one-sided embarrassing result. She is very she's very consistent. I mean, I can't think of another word to describe her, really. But having said that, consistency doesn't always get you big trophies, so she does need to make sure she brings that extra something to really stand out.
I've never seen her play where she's just had that fire where you just think, wow, like in the way that Danielle Collins, I think she hit over 50 winners at that night session against Cornet. She just believed in her shots and went for it, whereas you see Jessie Pegula, and I think she's a great baseliner, and she's obviously improving in the doubles, having great results. Unfortunately, not at this Grand Slam. But you're right, it is the consistency, and I guess that's something that can't really be mocked when players seem to have one great tournament and then they aren't able to back it up. And she's had 3 quarterfinals at Grand Slams this year. So maybe I'll not double down on my comments, because it is good having a consistent presence at the Grand Slams, because it's a bit unusual when you see kind of a different lineup of 8 each time. It's nice to have someone who applies that point of consistency on the WTA.
Someone you can rely on. It's always nice,
a banker, a familiar face.
Yeah. I mean, I think she for a male equivalent like Andrey Rublev or David Ferrer, I'm sort of thinking she's like they're the sort of players she's the equivalent of. Like, they're very consistent. They
plug
grind
away,
out wins, plugging away. Yep. And I guess she's kind of, is she the Rublev of the WTA tour? I don't know. Don't know if she'd enjoy that comparison or not, but I hope our listeners know what we mean when we say that. I mean, she's got Iga Swiatek next, who's had a very interesting day on court. Swiatek has been up against Jule Niemeyer, who we all know from Wimbledon. She made it to the quarterfinals as a qualifier. And Niemeyer at one point looked like she was going to cause a bit of an upset here, because she grabbed that first set 6-2. I watched a bit of the second set when they were sort of touch and go. They were breaking each other a piece. Swiatek managed to clinch that one 6-4. And we've just had the culmination of the match, the third set. It's gone very one-sided, I have to say. And Swiatek's bakery has opened once more, because it was a bagel in the third set. So Iga Swiatek is safely through in the end. Thoughts on this match? Is Swiatek, she's lucky to come through this, or did Niemeyer give this away and just kind of, Niemeyer had to get this done in 2? I was thinking during that second set, and I guess the evidence is clear.
It is clear by that bagel third set. I feel for Niemeyer on this one, because she was playing out of her skin tennis, and she was really one of those players who's playing against the number 1 seed. They turn up, they hit big, they commit to the game plan, but unfortunately it doesn't always last for the 2 sets they need it to. There will be that wobble or that moment when it doesn't quite go to plan. And then I think in that second set, there were something like 8 breaks of serve, or I think like 7 of the last 8 games of breaks of serve. So it's definitely a case where she started to think about probably the magnitude of what she was doing, taking out the number 1 seed at the US Open. And it's a big shame, because you don't want to see a scoreline where someone kind of completely mentally goes away or is completely kind of outplayed in that final set. But I don't think it necessarily sends sort of the message that Iga would want to. She's definitely a number 1 in unknown quantity. It was not convincing. It was that first set. I'm not sure if you saw any of it, Kim, but it was pretty ugly when it comes to some of the shot making, some of the footwork from her. And I think that in the back of her head, she doesn't have that same confidence that she had in the clay court swing. She doesn't think that she's unbeatable and that she'll find a way to win. I think this will probably be important, because she did find a way in what were difficult circumstances, but I'm not sure people are picking Iga for the title after this performance.
I mean, I think she's done pretty well considering she's not been at her best to get through to the quarterfinals without too much drama. I mean, yes, lucky to come through today. Nima, it seems, brings her A game to the Grand Slams, you know, a quarter and then a fourth round. I was
Watch out, AO.
Well, I know, yeah. I mean, I know that she didn't get all those ranking points from Wimbledon, which, you know, would have put her higher up for this. But she was still, she still had a direct entry to come into the US Open, so she didn't have to qualify for this, at least, I don't think. But, yeah, I think, I mean, Świątek very lucky to get through. Will Pegula's consistency be too much for Iga if she's sort of a bit off the ball? I mean, that's going to be an interesting question. But Świątek is a Grand Slam champion. We know that Grand Slam champions sometimes can just up their game when they need it. Sometimes all they need to do is just get through the first week, and then they suddenly bring it from the quarters onwards. And although she hasn't had a great summer, really, I still feel that deep inside Świątek is capable of bringing that out. So I wouldn't be surprised if
she's back in Iga.
Yeah. I
Iga
don't know.
over Pegula? Or...
Well, I mean, I have put Pegula in my final, haven't I?
Yeah,
but,
you have.
I'm just hedging my bet, saying I wouldn't be surprised if this happens or this.
Okay. I understand that. I'm going to say that one, I just can't see. I've never seen the Pegula magic turn up in a way that I think would be able to trouble some of those players, as you say, who've gone the distance. Obviously, she beat Kvitova, who's a Grand Slam champion, but I think it's a bit different when it comes to the later rounds. But she's had a semi-final. It's tough to know, but I think Iga will come through as well.
Yeah, it's like form versus experience, isn't it? Which matters the most at this moment. And two very experienced players are currently on court. Well, they've just come onto court. Victoria Azarenka against Karolina Pliskova. So we'll try and touch base on that before we finish for today. But yeah, I mean, both of them had good wins in their previous rounds. Pliskova over Bencic and Vika over Martic. So I feel like these two very seasoned competitors probably played a number of times. I'd like to think that Azarenka could come through this one because I think she's been playing some seriously good stuff. But Pliskova,
I'd like to see that as well. I'd like to see that as well. But I think whatever happens, if I were to say something as a prediction, I think there'll be a tie-break set, and it will make all the difference.
Ooh.
Every match, every women's match, it seems most matches, that first set's a tie-break. So I think there'll be one set that will sort of define which way it will go. I think it will be straight sets, but I think you had Pliskova down to win this one, Kim, in your predictions.
Okay.
I think she was one of your quarterfinal picks, potentially. I may have made that up, but I think she might have been because I think we questioned you on it because she hadn't necessarily had that much form coming into it.
Well, she didn't have much form coming into, Wimbledon last year, and she
suddenly
made the final.
If her serve works,
yeah,
tough to beat her.
She doesn't need to borrow Serena's serve after retirement. She's already kind of got a decent one. I think I could see perhaps a similar situation with a player being up and then someone else, coming back as well, like the we saw with the Samsonova Tomljanovic. So yeah, that could be going either way. I think that's quite a close one to call. We'll be getting on to all the men's action in just a bit. We're going to take a very quick break now. But do join us in the second half. We'll be getting our teeth into the Kyrios Medvedev match to begin with. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to our US Open Round 4 catch-up, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com. Now we're going to move on to look at the men's side of the singles action at the US Open. And we can't really not lead, I guess, with last night's showstopper, defending champion Daniil Medvedev against the young upstart Nick Kyrgios. Everyone was looking forward to this one. Everyone was wondering if this could decide the winner of the tournament. This was really a match we were earmarking from the word go. And well, the end result is that Nick Kyrgios has won through in 4 sets. As a result, Daniil Medvedev will no longer be world number 1. What did you make of this action we saw last night on Arthur Ashe? Chris, what was your opinion of Kyrgios's victory?
Well, it was eventful. That is for sure. We saw it all in this match. But I think the big take from it is that Nick is playing fearless tennis. He doesn't seem to be... I mean, he hits the ball twice as hard on breakpoint down, or in those big moments, he goes for it in a way that is almost, and I think it was Medvedev made the comparison, is almost sort of like playing at a level of Rafa or Djokovic, and we've always known that the big players in the big moments play some of the best shots, and it's the players that don't go for it and don't back themselves, they don't always come through, and I feel like it's something where Kyrgios is in the mentality that if he goes for it, he's going to make it, and it really showed that, especially in that first set tiebreak, which probably would have decided the match. I think he said that himself, that he really is backing himself. He's in a great sort of situation in terms of he's a professional now. He said that before. I just couldn't believe some of the returns he's making, some of the shot making. And in those last couple of sets, he made Medvedev, the world #1, look pretty ordinary. I think the question would be is he able to keep up this level across the entirety of the tournament? And if he starts to become the favourite, will that start to change his mentality from slightly the underdog in these situations against someone like Medvedev? I'm not sure how it will affect his sort of mindset, but either way, I think seeing that level of tennis is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it's interesting you say how his mindset might change, actually, because, you know, he's got Karen Khachanov next. The winner of that would play Berrettini and Ruud. And just based on what we've seen from Kyrgios here and also, you know, at Wimbledon, for me, I think he's certainly the favourite, I would say, to get into the final. And to be quite honest with you, you know, we've got Rafa on court at the moment. He's having some physical issues. I think Kyrgios is winning this now. I mean, maybe I'm getting a bit carried away based on the fact that he's just beaten Medvedev, but I just think if he's in this new kind of run of form, being more professional, more focused, you know, he would have won Wimbledon had it not been for Djokovic, essentially. I think he's just playing such a good level of tennis and seemingly got that new mindset. I don't know. I feel like he is the one to beat now to some extent. And I do think, yeah, it will be interesting to see if he puts that pressure on himself and puts that mantle on himself, and whether that will actually hinder his performance. So quite intrigued to see how he's going to get on and approach the next couple of matches. But yeah, he definitely brings it. Like you said, you know, he's got such a good record against the top players. You know, he's 4-1 against Medvedev now. Perhaps going into this, I should have looked more at that record, because I did have Medvedev, I think, down to win this one in based on collector set.
Unlucky,
really,
Kim, unlucky.
I know, not really sure why. I just thought, maybe Kyrgios won't keep up the Wimbledon form, but obviously he is. Remarkably, he's also up to 18 in the world now in the rankings. Feels
like he should be higher, right?
Well, he should be top 10, really, based on, you know, recent
the
form
Wimbledon
and
points, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, he would. Yeah, he probably would be. Alex de Minaur is no longer Australian #1, so Kyrgios is back, which is remarkable. He was 137 in the world just 6 months ago, so you know that's a massive rise. It would have been incredible with the Wimbledon points. Bit like Caroline Garcia, who was down at 75 in the world. She's now 17 in the world. So two players.
Are you drawing the comparison between Nick Kyrgios and Caroline Garcia?
Is he having a renaissance?
Maybe he is. I think maybe he is.
He's been inspired by her.
I mean, honestly, aren't we all?
Yeah, she is. She is so inspirational. She's also just going back to Caroline Garcia. She's still in the double. She's won her doubles again with Mladenovic today. So obviously, also the help of the doubles, another comparison, because Kyrios playing with Kokkinakis, you know, they won the Australian Open earlier this year. Was that the pivotal moment for Nick Kyrgios? Was that doubles title at your home slam akin to what Caroline Garcia did at Roland Garros? Is that the sort of thing that draws this all together?
I actually think that, I mean, we're kind of laughing about that, but I think potentially it was the moment when he started to deliver against sort of what was almost the burden of sort of unbearable or sort of unbelievable talent. You know, it was almost like that was, the pressure was always on him, having shown such good form when he was younger. And now it's almost the privilege of having such fantastic abilities on the tennis court. And probably the time when he started to realise some of that, and the crowd in Australia being so behind him after that Australian Open doubles win, was probably the first time he was a Grand Slam champion. You know, that's something that is mega, and whatever field it is, whether it's mixed, whether it's doubles, whether it's singles, and he wasn't able to bring it against Medvedev in Australia in the singles, but that definitely has changed the trajectory of his year, I think, undeniably. And I think probably the same for Garcia in many ways, getting back to winning ways and getting that confidence and that extra court time. I think it's given him that discipline so that every other day, instead of every other day, him playing a match, he has to follow the same routine every day because you play doubles on your off day. So I think that routine is something he's spoken about in terms of the professionalism of it, and you know, it's always getting ready for the next match rather than not taking it as seriously or practicing as much as you should do. So I'm going to take that question and I'm going to say yes. I think doubles, everyone should be playing it.
There's a lot to be said for routine, and also just kind of that time on court and boosting your, you know, the diversity of your skills, and perhaps it will encourage more players to enter the doubles game now that they've seen, you know, players have having invested time into it and having a significant improvement in their singles game as a result. I mean, let's just go back to the particular match with Medvedev. You know, obviously Kyrios won that on a very tight first set tiebreak, and he did say if he'd lost that first set, he was doubting whether he'd be able to come back. But winning that first set on the tiebreak, very critical, like we were saying with a lot of the women's matches. He did drop the second set, of course, but early on in the third set, I think Kyrios was 1-love down. There was a particular point where Kyrios had to come round the net onto Medvedev's side of the court to finish the point off. Well, I say had to. He didn't have to at all.
Recommended he didn't.
But it was basically a point he was certain to win, because the ball from Medvedev was you're going to bounce, I guess, on his side of the court or go out. So, you know, Kyrios didn't have to do anything, yet he chose to come round and play it. I mean, what was that? What was all that about? You know, it wasn't exactly like he was 5-2 up in the fourth set, you know, or whatever. That's the early days of the third set, and he decides to go and do that. I mean, what was that all about?
I think it must be like a moment of madness, over excitement maybe. Maybe he was already heading to the chair and he just thought, you know what, I'll just hit this whilst I'm on my way. But I can't think what would go through someone's head to do that. And one of the strangest things was not just the fact that he did it, but was also the reaction from commentators. There was a big debate as to whether you could do that or not. And in my mind, it was pretty clear that you probably can't send your doubles partner to the other side of the net and start hitting balls before they come over. But there was a big debate that happened, you know, amongst commentators as to what you could do. Because obviously if the ball bounces on your side, then bounces back, you can lean over and hit it. But at no point do you run round and just, you know, dig the ball away for a winner. So I've never seen anything like it. And I think maybe it was a gift to tennis Twitter. What do you think?
Possibly. He knew he wanted to create a talking point. I mean, I think if that was allowed, you'd be having a lot of accidents of people like traversing across.
You could rugby tackle your opponent.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Nick Kyrgios does make us a bit sort of speechless at times, doesn't he? So, I mean, it definitely raises the rule book point, like, oh, is that allowed? You know, some people new to tennis might not have realised that wasn't allowed, so perhaps he's taught us some lessons there.
For the very beginners, first time picking up a racket.
Tennis 101, yeah. I mean,
it's got to bounce.
Has probably got a lot of new people into tennis, though, Kyrios. You know, he's got a certain kind of following, perhaps, like, you know, there's a trend there. And the only other thing I thought was interesting from this match was that some of what Daniil Medvedev said afterwards as well. I'm just going to say it as you've written it, Chris, that he blamed his loss on the air conditioning in North America. Would you care to expand on that?
Yes, Kim, I would happily expand on that. So I reckon I can have a bit of sympathy for this, but I'm not sure it'd be the thing I would lead with. He essentially said that every time he plays the North American hardcourt swing, he actually becomes a victim of the heavy air conditioning. That you're constantly going into air conditioning, which is, I guess, drying out your sinuses, and therefore he gets colds and he gets under the weather during the swing. And apparently last year it happened in Cincinnati, and this year it happened at the US Open. And he was talking about going from hot air to cold air, the heavy air conditioning. And I think it's an unusual thing to bring up, but maybe it's something we should look at. You know, if he's going to be in North America every year, maybe he needs to find some non-air conditioned spaces in order to acclimatise to the conditions better so he can peak at the US Open. But that was a direct something that he said in his press conference, which I just thought we had to talk about, because what are your views on AC, Kim?
Well, I know what he means. Like, too much AC, I think, is known to kind of spread colds and what have you. I don't like to be blasted with too much cold either. However, my argument to Medvedev would be that it didn't. I mean, it may have affected him last year, but he went and won the tournament. And in 2019, he got to the final and had that ridiculous streak in North America. So previously, he's done all right with the aircon. So is he just using it as an excuse this year?
Could it be a good luck charm? Maybe actually it forces him to push himself harder because he's already up against an air conditioning related injury.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe I don't know if there's a workaround if you're sort of at the mercy of being in big air conditioned spaces.
He could camp. That's the only other option. Yeah.
Carry a heater with him, or that's not very environmentally friendly.
A humidifier.
He could camp, couldn't he? And then he could camp at Wimbledon as practice.
Yes, you could see him in the queue, Kim.
Oh dear. No, he won't be allowed at Wimbledon as it stands.
Oh, true.
What with everything.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I mean, Medvedev, air conditioning aside, he's not going to be the world #1 anymore. That is going to a new person. Or maybe not a new person, if Rafa has anything to say about it. We've got 3 candidates for world #1. Rafa Nadal, Carlos Alcaraz, or Casper Ruud. Any of those 3 will be the new world #1. I mean, personally, I'm quite surprised about Casper Ruud if it's going to be him. I think I would not have seen that coming at the start of the season. But I'll allow it. He's had a really great year, so I don't want to begrudge him anything. But I mean, who out of those 3, Chris, do you think is most likely?
I think Rafa deserves it, obviously. I think we have to say that without question, that the ranking systems would be... Yeah, exactly. The ranking system would be a bit on the silly side. I think we've seen it before where Serena's had 3 Grand Slams. I think this is way back. Quite a long time ago, and she was world #2, and she's like, well, maybe my goal is to win 1 more slam and become world #2 still, so I think for the sake of the sport, I think it's important that someone who has won a slam does have the ranking. And obviously it's a bit more difficult when obviously Djokovic didn't get points in Wimbledon, isn't able to play in a lot of this. So I think Rafa would be not only my personal choice but also the right choice in terms of tennis and who has displayed sort of the best results this year. On the Casper comment, I did try. I thought, you know what, for Joel's sake, I'll look at the maths behind it and try and figure out some of the scenarios. And I have failed miserably, but I think for Casper to get world #1, everyone else has to not do well. That's essentially, so if Rafa doesn't get to the final, I think it would have to be pre-semi-final losses for both of them, and Casper would have to win. So it's a bit of a long shot. It's nice that his name is in the running, but I think that is a step too far in terms of what would be expected based on how he's played and his results this year.
I mean, Rafa is currently a breakdown in the 3rd set against Francis Tiafoe at 1 set apiece. And I mean, Carlos Alcaraz, he's got Marin Cilic today, but he may not go that deep this tournament if the likes of Jannik Sinner have.
Are you saying that Casper it might be your pick for world #1?
I don't know. I'm just saying it may be the case that the others do fail, and
something unusual could happen here.
And by like 1 point or something, he clinches it. I don't know, or perhaps Rafa might not actually do that well, but neither will the others. In which case, it will be Rafa anyway.
Or they could all go out, and then it would be Rafa. It's Rafa's currently to lose, I believe, based on the current live rankings.
That's potentially the most likely scenario, that even if Rafa doesn't have a great
so
tournament,
we're saying he'll be the #1. Probably Rafa, because we think they might not go well for any of them.
Because they're all going to do terribly well.
Yes, exactly. Oh, God.
I mean, Ruud did come through yesterday against Corentin Moutet, which was, I think, a 4-setter.
Yes, the lucky loser, the lucky winner, as we called him on the last podcast.
Yeah, bit of I mean, this was very comfortable.
Now he's a lucky loser twice, right? That's not lucky to lose twice in a slam.
Well, pretty lucky to get to the fourth round when he wouldn't normally, perhaps. But
yes.
I mean, this was a pretty comfortable match for Ruud, apart from that third set, which he dropped on a tie break. So I feel like, I know Ruud had that match against Tommy Paul, which went to the fifth. He also had beat Tim van Rijthoven and Carl Edmund in the first round. But Berrettini in the next round is going to be, I think, another step up. Although Berrettini is not been playing his best, only kind of scraped through against ADF, Davidovich Fokina, 6-2 in the fifth set. So that's why, I mean, looking at this section of the draw, for me, Kyrios is the favourite. But just, I'm not convinced by really either Berrettini and Ruud in terms of the level they're at to win a Grand Slam. However, that's not taking anything away from them because they both made their way through the draw against the players that they've had to play against. But yeah, out of the two of them, what did you make of their respective fourth rounds? I feel like with the ADF Berrettini match, Davidovich Fokina is just one of those sort of nightmare players sometimes. He's just going to embroil you in a fifth set and you just don't want to get involved in it, do you?
Well, I think that's a bit how Berrettini felt. He said after the fourth set, he didn't have that much energy and he thought, I've just got to give it everything and just play unbelievable tennis and get it done. And he really did do that. I think maybe that's the attitude to, wait till the fifth set and then bring out your best tennis, the inevitable fifth set against ADF. But Berrettini, I think he's done well considering how little tennis he's managed to play this year. He's missed a couple of the majors. So it's obviously always a great achievement reaching a quarterfinal. I don't think he was convincing against Murray, and his serve wasn't particularly convincing. He was broken 4 times in this match, which for someone who is serving or can serve as well as he does, and on the courts that of Flushing Meadows, which are particularly quick and particularly difficult to return from, and I kind of feel like if that's not working as well as it should be, then I don't really think that the rest of his game has been working as well. And I think you can see that in some of the scorelines of the sets that weren't particularly close. So I wasn't that impressed. I think I'm more impressed by the fact that Casper has pulled this together at the US Open. Wimbledon was obviously a low point for him, losing the first round. And I think even though he lost that third set, he was pretty convincing the other 3, which I think does send out a message that you are able to rebound from it. But anyone who's losing a set to Coritin Mute, I don't necessarily think should be the world number 1. But is that a blanket statement? I'm sure that someone will find out that Mute took a set off like Nadal or someone at a tournament. But yeah, I'm not convinced by either performance when it comes to predicting them to go much further. Then one of them reached the semi-final, obviously.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think now if Mute has played Rafa before. I feel like they have, and I feel like he might have taken a set. But
oh no!
I mean, no, Mute.
Oh my goodness! No, they have played, and they didn't take a set. Thank goodness.
Oh, okay.
I saw that, and
intact.
I thought, yes.
I mean, he's down at 1-1-2 in the world. Like he's sort of been on the scene a few years, hasn't he? I think at one point was sort of labelled as a potential hope for French tennis. Bit of a fiery character, I think, at times. But yeah, I think Ruud did well to dispatch him fairly comfortably. And I mean, for Berrettini though, like, although he hasn't played particularly well, this is his 5th straight Grand Slam quarterfinal. So I think really he is a very consistent player. He's a bit like a Jesse Pegula in the sense that he does like to get to the second week of a slam and seems to do so fairly comfortably, aside from injuries and having to withdraw. But I think he said he's been struggling a bit with the temperature and then the humidity this week. And I mean, maybe he needs to get a bit of Daniil Medvedev's aircon and cool down in that. Maybe he's not having enough. But yeah, it's been trying conditions for all of them, hasn't it? Moving on quickly, I'm just conscious of time, Chris.
Yes, indeed. For Joel.
For Joel, yeah. Joel's still got to do all the editing. So I'm sure our listeners will be pleased to know Joel's not completely off the hook. He'll be having a late night in Madrid sorting us out. PCB, talking of Spain and Spaniards,
acronyms.
PCB, and acronyms. PCB is out, unfortunately, lost in 5 sets to Karen Khachanov, 6-3 in the 5th. bit of a shame for PCB given his recent form. But Karen Khachanov, it was always going to be one of those matches, I think, that could go either way. And I think this means that Karen Khachanov is back in the top 20 almost, I think, since 3 years ago. So he's one of those players that we know can be up there. We know has reached I think he's been to the semi-finals of a Grand Slam before, or just the quarterfinals. I'm not sure, just the quarterfinals. But I feel like he is one of those players that, definitely has the potential to go deep, but it's just we've never seen him finally get to that point. What did you make of this match? I mean, do you think that Khachanov has a chance against Kyrios, like looking ahead to the quarter?
Well, I went a little bit too hard in some of my comments on Khachanov in the last podcast. So when I saw this result, I thought I looked like a little bit of a fool in this space. But I'm obviously pleased for him because I think he's a player who, he's been as high as like world number 8 in, I think that was July 2019. And so it's one of those results where you just hope that he's able to push on and able to continue to perform well and play some great matches because, obviously he's got a tough next round against who our pick is for the title probably in the form of Kyrios if he can stay fit. But he's got to start winning more of these matches, and this is obviously a great first step because it could have gone one of two ways. He could have got nervous like he does do, and he's not always the best closer, I think is what I said. So outlasting PCB is no mean feat, especially in New York. So I'm pretty impressed with the result, and I think moving forwards, it would be great to see him moving up in the rankings again and showing that he can challenge the people who are ranked higher than him, because he has a great habit of beating people who are ranked lower than him. But then when it comes to those ranked higher, he doesn't necessarily always keep it as competitive as it should be. So good for Karen, but I do think that he might be stopped in the next round.
Yeah, and Kyrios is technically, I think, higher ranked than him going into the next match. But I think for me, PCB will be disappointed because I think having reached the semis here twice already, he would have been eyeing up like a window of opportunity. I know one of those times was when the Djokovic default incident happened, but
yes, indeed,
I think he would have been really hoping for a little bit more than the fourth round. But all in all, decent 10 days for PCB. Cam Norrie, on the other hand, this is, I think, for me, along with Rafa, who's potentially going to lose, we'll see. He might be going 2-1 down. Cam Norrie, against Andrey Rublev. I was so hoping for more than what we got today, Chris.
Yeah.
It was 6-4, 6-4, 6-4, straight sets for Rublev. Russians having, pretty decent tournament, apart from Medvedev, but, we've got Khachanov and Rublev through on the men's side. I know that Norrie himself would not be happy at his performance today. Lots of unforced errors, was getting quite frustrated. It wasn't a good performance, was it? It's a right shame that he couldn't give more today.
Yeah, I was watching quite a lot of that match today, and it was a mixture. I felt that he was struggling physically, is what it was quite clear from watching it, which is something that's quite surprising for Norrie, who's obviously someone who is very physically fit. The conditions are very testing. Again, he might be a candidate for an AC unit, but Rublev had fantastic tactics, and he was really making it difficult for Norrie's backhand to be a weapon. He had to give it a bit more height and a bit more depth, and he was missing long an awful lot. So it's a difficult result for him to process, probably because he was talking in interviews about how he does have ambitions of being world number 1 and of pushing even further up the rankings, and it won't be what he would have hoped. But again, it is his best result that he's had here, I believe. So in a similar way to the Jack Draper and the Andy Murray result, I think for all of the Brits here, they have put in a good showing for the men's side, but not quite got the results that they would have wanted. But nothing to be sort of ashamed of in any way, or to get your head kind of too low about, because again, he's backing up what was a breakout season last year with some more really great results.
Yeah, and I think this match they had to come off court because of a rain delay, and they restart under the roof. So, bit of a match of two parts really, but it didn't affect Rublev, who was just very, very consistent and doing what Rublev does best really, and getting the job done. And I mean, he'll be going into, well, I think this is his 6th Grand Slam.
His 6th Grand Slam quarterfinal.
But the thing is, he's never won any of those. So
yes,
I mean, this could be just going along with what else is happening right now. I just mentioned Rafa's gone 2-1 down. If TFO is winning that against Rafa right now, that'll be a TFO Rublev quarterfinal. So this could be Rublev's best chance, maybe, to make his first Slam semi.
I mean, even the way you said that, Kim, I'm impressed with the way that you're able to take the emotion out of that and even suggest that might be happening. So I think that's impressive in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I was shocked that he's actually had as many quarterfinals now as Medvedev at Grand Slams and won more than Tsitsipas. But he just, as you say, he hasn't won any of them. So I think if Nadal wins and he's still, as well, we could discuss this in a second, but he's probably struggling physically and TFO hasn't had that much experience at this level, either way, it's going to be a good matchup for Rublev, especially considering he has had that win over Nadal on clay. So maybe this is the year that Rublev finally wins a quarterfinal.
Well, I think there's a strong possibility of it happening. And, I mean, good for him if he does, because he's put a lot of hard work and, he's a very...
he grinds it out, doesn't he?
Diligent, yeah, exactly. He's
put her
the
in the
Jesse
Pagula camp. The Jesse Pagula.
He is Jesse Pagula of the male tour.
Yeah.
I mean,
of them.
This Rafa match,
Yes.
Rafa's been struggling physically from what it seems. He had treatment after the first set, after he dropped that, was able to grab the second. But, I mean, we haven't seen the best of Rafa so far this tournament. He does seem to be quite tentative with his serve and his movement. I think this is as a result of, obviously, the big abdominal tear that he had and getting back into kind of his usual habits and everything. But it seems to be really quite afflicting him. So I don't want to make excuses and say, oh, it's an injury, blah, blah, blah. But it does seem like he really
it is an injury,
at
I
his
think.
best.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he never likes to make excuses, but, you can't really hide certain things. So
Unlike Medvedev with the aircon.
So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens, because obviously we're finishing recording very shortly, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rafa, doesn't come back from this deficit. After we saw what happened at Wimbledon, where he played through the pain and then obviously had to withdraw before his semi-final. Personally, as a big fan of Rafa, I'd rather he didn't push himself through to the point where it was going to be incredibly awful or damaging for him. So I'm sure Rafa fans listening would agree. So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens in the next sort of hour or so. But I wouldn't be surprised kind of either way, really.
Yeah, I agree. And if the worst does happen, Kim, next podcast could be a therapy session. We can talk it out. We can talk about how great a year he's had. But I think you're right. I think at times there are players who make excuses. Rafa's never one of those players. And unfortunately, even if he does say that his opponent outplayed him, the data and the analysis doesn't lie. Like as we've looked at, his serve is not the same. He's not extending as far as he has done previously. He's having a contact point that's lower, and the speed has dropped, and it's definitely affecting him. Or if it's not affecting him, he's definitely having to modify how he plays in order to be competitive, which is not where you want to be as a tennis player, especially at his stage of his career. So I hope that he's able to stay fit and healthy, and we get to see him at the end of season championships and to play beyond this. This isn't something that obviously ends his season, but I mean, it's quite clear that the abdominal injury is still something that's affecting him, and it will take a while probably for him to be able to recover from it.
Yeah, it's a right shame. And just in terms of the statistics and then the GOAT race, Djokovic not being here, like a lot of people were saying, this is a great chance for Rafa to get 23, but it does seem like the odds are against him if the injury is going to play into it that much. But just quickly looking ahead to the evening matches, Chris, Collins against Sabalenka and then Cilic against Alcaraz. We're a bit short on time now, so who's winning both of those very quickly? Who you got?
Danielle Collins
All
Cilic.
right. Oh, Cilic. Okay.
You
Yeah.
just said say names and I've just done it. I don't know why I've said that, but that's what I'm saying.
Now I'm criticising your decision.
No,
so
no.
I'm not. I agree. I think Collins. I think Collins on this one. Although Sabalenka has been getting some decent scorelines in, I'd like to see Alcaraz win. I've got him going deeper, but I would. Yeah, I feel like I say I wouldn't be surprised a lot, but. Yeah, Cilic has been in decent form.
It's so hard to
recently.
call these matches this year.
Yeah, and Alcaraz has just been slightly less convincing over the last few months, hasn't he? So his stars are kind of waning. He needs to shake us up a bit. Tomorrow we've got Berrettini versus Rude, Jabeur, Tomljanovic, Gauff, Garcia. That's in the night session, and then Kyrios, Kachanov. So lots to look forward to. We've also got in the doubles, Joe Salisbury, Rajiv Ram is still going strong. They're in the men's quarters, and Lloyd Glasspool is on court at the moment with Helio Vara against Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis. So I think they're their last Brits we've got in the doubles. We'll do a collector set update, I think, on Wednesday, which is when I think me and you are both in action on the podcast again.
We are back.
Joel will be, I think, somewhere else in Europe with work potentially by then. I've lost track. He's becoming a right little globe
Jet setter, isn't he?
So, but we will be back to round up all of the quarterfinal action on Wednesday night. So we do hope you can join us then. But in the meantime, listeners, remember you can subscribe to Tennis Weekly on whatever device you listen to us on. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. You can also listen to us on the downloadtennis.com app. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can follow us on social media and email the show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's at Tennis Weekly Pod. You can email the show at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or check out the website www.tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back on Wednesday at Tennis Weekly HQ to catch up on all the quarterfinal action. So I hope you can join us then. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. So we will see you again soon.